Welcome to More Precious Than Rubies. If you're tuning in for the first time, this is part 2 of our conversation with Rachel Burrows. In the first episode, we talked about her journey with mental health and how her story resonates with the biblical figure Hagar, reminding us that God is present even in our hardest moments. If you haven't heard it yet, I encourage you to go back and listen to part 1. It sets the stage for everything that we'll be discussing today. In today's episode, we're shifting focus to explore Rachel's passions, such as earring making, and we'll tell you where you can find cute earrings like this that she's made, and hear more about her journey with anxiety. From the practical adjustments that she's made to the deeper lessons she's learned, Rachel's story is one of resilience and encouragement. So let's dive in. Hagar named God El Roy, meaning the God who sees me. And in those times when you felt most alone, you talked a little bit about how you felt God's presence in the people you were around and the things that happened in your life. I know that you felt his presence, but there are times where you really felt like maybe in your loneliness that God was seeing you.
Yeah. With therapy, my therapist was talking to me about this anxiety intensive retreats that they were hosting. And I go to like a Christian therapy place. And so I also was like, okay, I know like God is going to be present there. I mean, whether or not it was Christian, I knew God would at least meet me there, right? But I was like, I know they're going to be implementing the Bible and whatnot. And so I was like, I really want to go, but it was so much money. And so I was like, there's no way I'm going to be able to afford this. And I like mentioned it to Blake and he was like, that sounds really cool, but I don't think we can do it. And so I told my therapist that. I went back and I told her and she's like, well, actually like we have a grant. And so like we're willing to like give away scholarships for people to come because we think this is like going to be really powerful. So I went home and I applied and within like the hour, another lady emailed me back and was like, hey, like, I'm going to call you later today and like give you some details. And she called me within like the next hour and was like, yeah, here's the money.
Wow.
And I was like, no way. There's no way. Like a grant is big enough to cover this much money for one person to go, let alone if other people need help. And she was like, Rachel, like take this as like God's provision for you of like God wants you here. He's going to meet you here. He's going to help you. And like, I'm just thankful we have the resources to make that happen at the same time.
It's like a Christian counseling organization so that they're not just like, oh yeah, you know, we you're lucky, that must be karma or whatever it may be. It's you can see it
it's
as a blessing from
like, It truly is like a blessing from God. That one, they received a grant and they have then the means to like, it came at the right time to then provide money for people who want to come to this anxiety intensive retreat. Yeah. It was used well. Yeah. You know, and so I think that just reminds me a ton of Philippians 4:4 through 7. And it says, rejoice in the Lord always. Again, I will say rejoice. Let your reasonableness be known to everyone. The Lord is at hand. Do not be anxious about anything, but in everything by prayer and supplication with thanksgiving, let your requests be known to God. And the peace of God will surpass your understanding, will guard your heart and minds in Christ Jesus. And so just like God wants us to come to him with our anxiety and with our prayers and with our worries and with any request we have. And he's just waiting there like a dog with a happy tail. Like, yeah, I can't wait to help you. And we're like, and it's so often we're like, no, I can do this myself. Yeah. And I'm naturally someone who wants to lean that way. Okay. Of I can do this myself. He's not like, well, you didn't come to me the last 4 times, so I don't know if I'm going to help you this time. He's always, yes. Yeah. You know, he's so willing and eager to help us. And so I think that's helped me a lot too, to just remember like when I'm feeling anxious or I have this like outrageous prayer request, it's like come to him and pray. And it might not always be in our time, but it's going to be in his time. But he's still going to answer those prayers.
Yeah. Amen. Are there ways that you can see that you found strength and encouragement in Hagar's story specifically, and how she survived and ultimately thrived despite her circumstances.
Yeah, I think ultimately any Bible character you look at, but specifically Hagar, it's the obedience.
Okay.
God says do this and you do it, he's gonna like return his grace and his blessings in like tenfolds, right?
Yes.
And he will always keep his promise. And so I think just like the reminder to be obedient and have the strength to be obedient to and not question God. And sometimes they still struggle. Like, I'll be obedient and I will give it my best effort. And God's like, perfect. That's all I asked. I asked that you be obedient. Or there's times where people still struggle and will sidetrack and come back, but God still remains that faithful God, right? He can't go against his character. And so that's what helps me a lot too, is just knowing like God's not going to go against his character. He's not going to spite me down because I didn't listen.
Right.
He might teach me a lesson or two, but he's not going to spite me down or disown me.
Well, right. And it's lessons that just like parents give us, it's because they know it will help us in the end.
Yeah.
It's like, it's the obedience and then maybe a form of practice of that obedience. And if we go against the task, it may come with a punishment, but only to help us the next time that obedience is asked for. So that's a great way to see it, as a form of obedience. And even in Hagar's story, we saw the response that, because an angel appeared to her and was able to tell her, like, this is your promise from God. And we may not always get that angelic response of like an in the moment promise, but you did almost in that sense, is you were wanting to obey. You're wanting to obey the attempt at like getting help and doing it in a community of Christ-centered people. And you did kind of get to see like a quick reward in that and a quick blessing in that. So that should be an encouragement to people, is yes, it may take time sometimes, but God will show up and he will give you those quick responses when they're needed. So well, Rachel, we've talked a lot about your similarities with Hagar, and it's been such a great time of conversation comparing the both of you. But I want to ask you a few more questions about you so that people can get to know you a little bit better. So get some questions into an insight of your journey. You've taken on a lot of passions in your artistic realm. You've done photography, you've done polymer jewelry, and now floral design too. So why do you think it's important for people to express themselves creatively through art?
Yeah. I think we're created by a creative person. And so I think naturally, to a degree, it's in all of us. We want to create something. And it doesn't always mean something tangible and beautiful that people can purchase. It's creating a healthy family dynamic, creating, like I said, like a good business team. But I think for me to be creating something tangible, it helps a lot with my anxiety. It's something you
can focus on it.
Focus on and like put my passion into and like see it come to life helps me a lot, and be sometimes, hopefully most of the time, healthily distracted.
Okay.
Right? I'm going to put my energy instead of into these lies into something creative and watch it blossom and be like, this is what I was made for. So I think it's important for anyone to like delve into their creative tune, I guess. No matter how they want to define it, because I think it's ultimately healthy and it's going to help them discover something about God too. Because I think for me with photography, it's like there's so many beautiful things to photograph, whether it's just nature, but God literally planted all these plants. Whether it's taking family portraits, God created each human.
Yeah, definitely. Can you tell people a little bit more about your businesses in case they're interested in looking them up?
Yes. I do polymer clay earrings, and I've tried to like delve into like maybe like necklaces or bracelets and whatnot, more like charm-esque wise. And so that's under like A Way of Handmaids, and it's on Instagram. I have a website, all under A Way of Handmaids. And then a we used to be coworkers. We both quit our jobs and
became creative ladies
yes,
together.
And became creative ladies instead with the passion of floral design. And so we have like the aspiration to just bring people together. So it doesn't necessarily have to be for weddings. It's just the idea of like coming together in what you would call a sacred place. It could simply be a dinner party, a birthday party. It could be a wedding.
Okay.
But just the idea of like we want people to come together and like have our floral design like speak that in a way. And so we've created Wild Haven as like Haven's your safe place. And the flowers are wild. And so that's on Instagram, and under our website is Wild Haven Collective.
Okay.
I believe.
Okay, I will link both Instagram handles and your websites in the show notes in case anybody's interested. But I've loved seeing your businesses grow and your passions for art grow. Myself as a creative as well, it's just fun to be amongst other creators and other creative people.
And we feed off each other.
We do. And I think that I agree with you in that. I think that everyone has an artistic bone in their body. And art can be so many things. And I always encourage people, like, look for what it is. If you don't think you're a creative person, it's probably because you just haven't tried the art form that you're good at or that you like first. You don't have to be good at it. You don't have to be good at it. You can just have fun doing it, or feel like you can escape for a while and see God's vision in what you're creating. You don't have to be good at it.
It doesn't have to earn you money.
Right.
It's not something you like have to be perfect at.
Right.
I think ultimately being creative is supposed to bring you back to who you were meant to be. I think like it's supposed to bring you back to our creator.
Yeah.
Right. He created us. And so I think, just how I said, like, I think we all have this creative bone in our body. I can't help but be creative. So to me, I'm like, well, how can I make money from this? But yeah, I think it's just ultimately supposed to be something that's healing and bring you back to like your creator.
I love that. Now, kind of going back into our discussion about mental health, what is an element of mental health struggles that you wish was more talked about in today's society? I've seen personally just you've used social media to talk about your mental health struggles, and I've appreciated that because I'm someone who, I will admit, I didn't know much about it before. But now that, and we'll talk about this a little later, but I feel like our younger generations are starting to kind of pave the way for more open discussion in mental health. Yeah. But you, as someone we kind of belong in the millennial age range, and I think we're still trying to like get into that groove of being okay with talking about it. What's something that you either wish someone asked you about more often, or you just wish was more talked about?
Yeah, I think there's a couple things. Maybe they're a little selfish for like my own journey of like, I wish it was more accessible, or I could find more people talking about it so I would feel less alone. But just like simply like, what makes people feel anxious?
Okay.
Like, is it going to the dentist? Is it going on a trip? Is it like, what's causing it? Because I know for myself, one of mine is going to the dentist. I hate going to the dentist. And I'm like, am I crazy? Am I alone? Do other people hate going to the dentist? Do they cry when they have to go? So part of me is like, maybe that's just selfish because I want to not feel alone. But I also think that might normalize. It's okay to feel anxious about these things.
Sure.
Versus us being like, yeah, I get anxious.
Yeah.
Well, what does that mean to you?
Yeah.
You know, and I think, yes, there's a wide range of anxiety and what different things can cause anxiety. But also for me, when I don't want to feel alone, I'm like looking for affirmation of like, it's okay you feel that way. I get anxious about that too. Yeah. And then I'm like, okay, I'm normal. And I think another one I like briefly mentioned, Blake and I like want to start a family soon. And I actually stopped taking the medication I've been on back in January in hopes of being able to get pregnant. And not that that was preventing it at all, but it was just like maybe not the best medication to be on pregnant. By my doctor's advice. And so I like stopped taking it. And then in June this year, a lot of this that we've talked about came up again. Where I was like, I can't suppress this anxiety anymore. And it just like came pouring out of me. I eventually went back to the doctor, to a different doctor at the time, and had a lot of discussions of like trying to get pregnant, but having anxiety. What do I do with this? And I felt so isolated. And I don't know if that's because I went and saw a male doctor.
Okay.
Like, I don't know. But he reached out to like different OBGYNs for me.
Okay.
He was like, I want to give you the best answer. And I genuinely appreciated his honesty.
Okay.
And gave me a lot of comfort. But with that said, like, I wish women who are pregnant, trying to get pregnant, people have been past that, maybe postpartum depression, I don't know. But just like they would talk about it more of like because I'm like, how many women have been on medication while pregnant? I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know anyone personally.
Okay.
And so in that, I feel alone of I'm back on medication and trying to get pregnant. Am I going to be alone in this?
Okay. Yeah. So I think that it's like using our power of our story to bring it up and talk to each other. And I think that that's helpful, like even just us as friends, like knowing what to be sensitive to, how to ask our friends about, like once we know, okay, we know Rachel that's something that is difficult for her. Like, how can we help her? How can we come alongside her in that? Even as a spouse too, like knowing those things going forward, I'm hoping that, women feel comfortable sharing that with their spouse, even if not their friends or their counselor, hoping that women can use those opportunities to, once they hear I'm not alone in this, or like I do feel alone, help, like asking for help when you need it. I think that that's important too. Yeah. Now, Rachel, you've mentioned that you've had to navigate the complexities of finding the right medication, just like we're talking about, to help with your mental health and even deal with your allergies. That can also feel like a wilderness. Like there's so many options out there. And I remember your struggle with finding things that would work well for your skin and without giving it an allergic reaction. So how has your faith helped you to persevere through those challenges? I'm sure that as time has gone on, it's gotten hopefully better because you've been able to find things that work for you. But how has your faith kind of helped to propel you through those difficulties? Yeah.
I mean, we didn't touch a ton today on my like allergies and whatnot, but I was basically like borderline celiac at the end of high school and all the way through college. That I ended up being gluten-free for almost 10 years.
You did, yeah.
And in the midst of that, I wouldn't say one, because maybe it was like the fad, that I didn't necessarily feel alone in it, but I felt alone in the aspect of like, but this is real. Like I'm not doing it just for the fun of being on a gluten-free diet. It was like, I literally feel sick if I eat this, and people not taking it seriously.
Yeah.
And then also I'm allergic to a lot of like topical things. And one of the biggest ones is fragrances. And so like as a woman, I'm like, I want to smell nice. I don't want to wear deodorant. I want to just have nice hair. And I like can't use anything. I'm allergic to all fragrance. And so it's like my laundry detergent, my deodorant, my shampoo, my conditioner. If I want to wear perfume, I have to be prepared for a headache all day. Like, but like something topical like perfume or lotions or whatnot, like I will literally get hives. And so sometimes when I travel, I like, part of me is like, I have my cortisone cream in preparation of hives from laundry detergents or whatnot.
Yeah. When you have to succumb to anybody else's products, for sure.
Yeah. And that's just something where I feel like, instead of feeling like, woe is me, I've like had to be like, this is life and this is the card I've been dealt. And there's so many other ways like God's blessed me with things that it's like I can't complain necessarily. Like I get to travel. How exciting.
Sure.
Right? I don't need to complain about maybe having a body rash for a couple days. Like it might be itchy, but like I get to enjoy the things around me. And I think that we all got something in a way, and if you don't have anything, God bless you. Like, I hope it stays that way. But when it comes to like, I guess the big picture of anxiety, family dynamics, allergies, marriage, babies, like trying to conceive, like it's just like, part of me hates the phrase of like, God's not going to give you something you can't handle. Right. But part of that to me is like, but also like he knows what I can handle in this moment.
Mm-hmm.
And it might be hard. It might be challenging. And I'm going to be like, I cannot handle this. And he's like, you can. And I'm just stretching you and I'm pushing you.
Mm-hmm. Finding our perspective on things and taking a step back and being like, what is God trying to teach us in this moment? And again, finding ways that we can ground ourselves in like his promises is a good example of that. And like you said, seeing a perspective of like, there are things that could be way more difficult to deal with, and you've dealt with difficult things before. So I'm sure at some points it's like, I have a rash, but at least I'm not dealing with an anxiety attack right now or things like that. So I think it's like, seeing those tiny moments of relief is good too for like our moments of high stress in those times.
And I think honestly too, like just speaking truth over myself, or like if there's times where I'm like, I don't know the truth, that like I've now had these conversations with Blake. If I ever say I don't know the truth, he's like, this is the truth. Like building that army around me. Yeah. To like speak the truth over me. But I'm like, no, I really feel like a failure. Like I don't see how I'm not a failure. I don't know the truth. He's like, you're not a failure because X, Y, and Z. And like all perspective, but ultimately like also remembering the truth in our identity in Christ, I think has also helped a lot. Yeah. To then also remember to have the correct perspective.
Yeah. That's great. Now, this one's just off the cuff here. Okay. According to a recent Gallup study, which I'll link in the show notes in case you're interested in reading it, a larger portion of Gen Z reports that their mental health and emotional well-being as poor or only fair compared to older generations. So what do you think has contributed to this shift in not only admitting it, but like the decrease in mental health?
Social media.
Okay.
Yeah. And part of that is because I've been told that answer by my therapist. Sure. But I experience it myself. Yeah. And I mean, there's been several studies of like how has social media affected us. Yeah. And if you look at our grandparents, they probably have zero anxiety. I mean, they might nowadays, but like the level of it and how long they've experienced it, social media didn't exist. My mom has anxiety over whether or not we're coming home for dinner. Sure. Right? My dad's anxiety is his job. Sure. And things he's seen, worked with. I don't know. But like, they're not, my mom's on social media now. My dad's not on social media. My grandparents have been on social media, 5 years now? Yeah. Like, the things that bring them anxiety or affect their mental health are not near what affects our mental health, the kids younger than us, their mental health. And I think it's because I want to say it's the enemy's platform, like, which makes it scary to say because it's like we're on social media, but how can you change like maybe the enemy's platform to God's platform? Yeah. Of just the idea of like, we're comparing ourselves on social media. Definitely. We are cyberbullying each other on social media. Like there's so many things happening on social media that wouldn't happen otherwise. You experience more FOMO because of social media. Yeah. Right? Like, oh, I don't have friends because I wasn't invited to this party. And now you're down on yourself about it instead of like not knowing the party existed and living carefree. Right. Yeah. I was just listening to my sermon this past Sunday, and we were talking about anger. And we were talking about how there was like, I'll have to look up the specific statistic, but I think it was something like 85% of social media posts that do categorically well are rage bait, basically. Yes. And I think that that's where we feel a lot of our anxieties start to bubble up is if it is rooted in anger, oh boy, you better watch out, because if you even just go on your phone, you're likely to find something that's going to make you angry or stressed or feel like you're missing out or feel like you're lonely or not, that I totally agree with it. It's like a snowball of just anxiety. And the more you scroll, the more you see, and the more you see is the worse it gets.
Yeah. Definitely.
And I
like because those posts that you stay on are going to wind up in your algorithm.
Yeah.
unfortunately, a lot of our younger generation too, even though they're more willing to speak into it, are also the ones who are more often found on social media because they're growing up with it now. I think that's something I'm thankful for, is that I didn't grow up with social media. I have it now, but
it's like the enemy's platform, because he's trying to tear us down every time you go on there. And I think maybe that's why when I've gone on there in the past, and Ariana mentioned that, like, I've used it to, like, try and talk about my anxieties and invite people into it with me. Like, on my, like, close friends list, it's, like, people who I wish I could talk to every day. I would have the time. We could sit for 3 hours and talk. But that's just not practical. And so for me, if I go on to, like, my close friends list and I'm saying, like, I'm feeling really anxious and here's why, or this has been really hard in life, or this has been great in life, like, I want to share these things with you, it's because, like, these are my people that I wish I could share everything with, and I'm trying to share everything with, and, like, let them into the dark moments, let them into the bright moments too, you know? And so trying to use that for, like, God's good and, like, glory of, like, I don't have to feel alone. I can communicate with my friends, but also, like, what am I consuming? I've, like, gone through somewhat recently and, like, deleted, like, unfollowed people or pages, whatever, that, like, I feel like aren't life-giving, or it literally sucks me further into social media. And I'm sitting on Instagram for 3 hours. Right. I'm like, how can I avoid sitting on Instagram for 3 hours?
Yeah. I mean, something that Adam and I have, I mean, we haven't been good readers particularly, but this past Sunday, we, like, forced ourselves to sit and read for, like, 6 hours. And that felt like such a win. And I myself struggle with TikTok. That's, like, my social media doom scroll of choice. And I just have forced myself. I think it's been, like, 5 days that I haven't opened it, and I haven't needed to delete it. Yeah. If it were my choice, I wouldn't. I remember back in college, I chose to delete social media when Adam and I had broken up. And that was super healing for me because I was avoiding everything that I was afraid to see. Yeah. And so I know that I do it for my good. Unfortunately, my job requires social media access. Right now it doesn't, though. So I've been trying to force myself to be in those situations where I'm not looking at TikTok or Instagram or anything like that. And I've felt better. Yeah. And doing things like that are creative or that I'm learning something. Yeah. That's really helped my brain. I will admit, though, trash TV is still my form of, like, okay, I want to turn my brain off. What can I do? I guess I'll. But I think if we try to at least mentally make a goal to, like, replace one of those things, I think that we're going to end up being better for it. And we're going to only end up eventually maybe getting rid of all those things and helping us to be more encouraged and more given of life if we just continue to practice those things. So why do you believe that younger generations are even just more willing to discuss it, whether it is on social media or whether it's with their friends? Why do you think that they're more willing to seek help or talk about it?
Society for that generation, the people younger than us who are more comfortable to talk about addictions or their mental health or anything really, is because they crave that authenticity. And I think they're so willing to share it because they know at least maybe those in their age range will gladly receive it and also give it back. Like they're not left empty-handed. Yeah. Versus I think for us and anyone older than us, a lot of those topics are taboo and have always been the family secret or swept under the rug, and I think these kids are making us realize, like, you can't just sweep it under the rug anymore. Yeah. And I think people still try. Yeah. But, like, it comes with consequences, whether you bring it to light and you really then have to deal with it, or you continue to sweep it under the rug. Yeah. And you just continue to avoid it. And then it grows into this bigger monster that who knows when it's going to come out. Yeah. And, like, maybe it never comes out. But, like, it's harder to deal with day in and day out the bigger the monster gets. Sure. Versus talking about it, having a fresh breath of air, or letting someone speak the truth into it. I think that's why kids are more willing to speak about it now, is just they crave that authenticity. Yeah, I think that's interesting. And I think hopefully we'll only continue to see that trend go on as more of our generations are more comfortable with it.
I'm hoping that it will become less taboo and more of a comfortable subject for people. So as someone who's going through a mental health journey, and or even just allergies and skin allergies and diet restrictions, how do you incorporate faith into your daily life when you feel like everything's just crumbling? How do you use faith to help you?
Sometimes I have to lean on the people around me. Like I mentioned, like build your army. And so if I can't remember to do it myself and have that be my first response, like lean on the people around me to remind me to do it. And I think that's a big one, because if you don't have that army when there are those days, you're just not going to do it. Right. And so I think that was like really important for me to remember to do it every day.
Okay.
Otherwise days would go by potentially.
Yeah.
But besides that, I try and read my Bible every day, and I've joined a Bible study. Like now our church has open Bible studies back up for the semester. I don't know. That like I'm in that now. And so I think just like finding community has helped a lot too, to remember to live in it every day. And it makes me excited then to like read my Bible and be like, oh my gosh, like I can make these connections. It's true. Once you get in the habit, it's like, it's hard to break that habit when you know it's doing so much good for you. And what has helped me, going back to social media a little bit, what's helped me be more diligent about reading my Bible is on your phone. Like I've set, like I can't access certain apps on my phone between 9:30 at night to 11 o'clock in the morning. So that way it's not the last thing I see when I go to bed, and it's not the first thing I open when I wake up. It's like if I wake up at 8:30, I can't go on Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, whatever else I want, whatever else is your little doom scroll, until 11 a.m. So what am I going to do?
Hopefully read your Bible.
Yeah, hopefully read my Bible. But honestly, that has helped
a
ton of just being like, my main distraction is now eliminated.
Yeah. And it's like so crazy to think that we've kind of had to do that. We've had to be our own parents and like take our toys away, which I'm glad that our phones let us do that. But it is just kind of funny when you think about it. Like we have to be and it's good to have those accountability partners like in your life group or your spouse being like, I see you on Instagram. Don't do it. It's not going to end up well for you.
Yeah.
And so I like to think of myself as someone who is coached well and learns well from other like people reminding me things gently. But using those accountability partners, using the people who show up for you in your life to remind you of the truths and know you well enough to be like, that the thing that you're doing right now is not going to end in a good space for you right now. So let's do something else together. The last question I want to ask you, Rachel, is I want you to speak to the people who are going through mental health journeys, who are struggling with finding a medication that works for them, struggling to open up and talk to their friends about their journey, allergies. So I want you to speak to them on how they can be encouraged and see their faith as something that can help strengthen them, not take them back. And maybe also just a second-fold question here. What is something that you would say to someone that's a friend of someone with a mental health journey? How can they either maybe press gently into their lives and ask them what their anxieties are so they can help to better understand them, or just be there for that person? So maybe you can answer those two things for me.
Yeah. I think for the person who is going through their mental health journey, and that can be so many different facets of it, and it could be multiple at once. I think being able to first identify what it is, and if that means talking to other people without fully disclosing what you're maybe going through. But like for me, like I said, it wasn't until I found out, I was able to find that word, anxiety, to piece together what I was feeling. That I was like, oh my gosh, this makes so much more sense. I think find that word for you. Because then when you do then need or choose to go get the help that you need, you're going to be able to speak for yourself better and advocate for yourself better.
Sure.
And I think that's, again, another big one is advocating for yourself.
Okay.
Maybe some people might think I did it wrong where I like went to the doctors without telling my family and I took medicine without telling my family right away. But I had the strength to advocate for myself. And I think that was a big piece too, is like, it's hard to find that confidence to advocate for yourself. But if you have it, or if you find it, or if just one person is in your corner and helping you advocate, bring them into that. Nowadays, you can still bring someone to the doctor with you again. You can see if your therapist would let them come in. Like, find someone who can help you advocate if you can't do it for yourself.
Yeah.
For me, what helped me a ton when I like felt so hopeless was just listening to worship music.
Okay.
And so I think if you are a believer and you don't know what to pray, because there's moments where I was like, I literally have no words. I'm just angry. I have too many feelings. I don't know how to articulate. I would just listen to worship music and make those my prayers. I would lay on the floor and cry. I would scream them out loud in my car. Like, I would just find ways to let those songs be my prayers when I didn't know what to pray. And I think that helped me a ton to not feel like I had to be put together.
Okay.
And I think that's hard with anxiety, is I feel like in order to, for me, I guess I should speak for myself, in order to come to God, sometimes I feel like I had to be put together or know what to pray. But he already knows what I need, whether I have a voice for it or not, words for it or not. And so I think that just helped me a ton. If you have access to therapy, get therapy.
Yeah.
And I would say my experience with a non-Christian therapist and a Christian therapist has actually been drastically different.
Okay.
And so if you can find a Christian therapist, I would suggest it.
Okay. Yeah. And if you're a friend to someone who is going through a mental health journey, I hope that we've been able to do well for you. I think that we've seen it kind of change over the years. And like you said, I've been privileged to be a part of your close friends group on Instagram. And I'm thankful that you were willing to do that so that I can better understand, because I think that's hard too when someone's like, we don't understand, or we can't really say, I understand how you're feeling, because I don't. I can at least hear you say it and hopefully know how to better react to someone if they're telling me they're going through this too.
Yeah. And I think if you are a friend of someone who is having a mental health journey, and again, that's so many different things, I think the best thing you can do is press in. And I think that really is the word, press in. Because I know I showed up at different times, either faking it till I make it, where I'd be like, I'm fine, and keep going and be the life of the party and make jokes and then go home and cry. Or I just wouldn't show up and I'd be like, I was just anxious. Sorry, I didn't come. Right. But I think if you press in, Rachel, how are you really doing? Like, hey, I know you showed up with a lot of fun tonight, but like, how has this week been?
Okay.
Like, just asking like that one extra question instead of just taking it at face value. Like, don't be the grocery store clerk. There's enough grocery store clerks in the world to just have that small talk conversation about, how was your day? Good.
Yeah.
And then let it be that. It's like, how was your day? It was good. Yeah, what was good about it? And then be like, if I can't think of a good answer, be like, was it good? Like, or did you have a hard day? I had a hard day. And then it's that one step.
Yeah.
Right. I think as a friend.
And it doesn't even have to, I think that's interesting too, because you didn't ask, what are you anxious about today? You allowed the other person to talk about it if they wanted to. Because I think sometimes people might be afraid that the person doesn't want to talk about their anxieties because it's already overwhelming them. Yeah. But you're not. You're just allowing them to talk about what they want to talk about and to what extent they want to talk to the other person about it.
Yeah. And I think when you have that trust with a friendship, there might be days where I'm totally willing to talk about it. I think I'm naturally a very open book and I don't mind sharing about it. But there might be days where it's harder to share about it, where I might give you this much today, ask me again tomorrow, I might give you that much. And that's not because I trust you any less. It's just where I'm at in the process and my feelings.
Yeah.
Right? Especially if you're doing it with a close friend. Granted, if it's an acquaintance, that's a different story. I think you do have to earn trust.
Yeah.
But yeah, to be that friend and just press a little bit more. But also, like, just create that safe space. If you know you want to hang out with your friend who might be feeling a little anxious, be like, hey, like, I'm having a birthday party. You're more than welcome to come. But, like, if you're feeling anxious, I would love just to, like, have you over.
Okay.
Give them another option.
Okay.
Right? So that way they don't feel pressure to show up if they're feeling anxious. And if they don't show up, they let you down.
Yeah.
But let them know, like, hey, I see you. I hear you. I still care about you. Come to my birthday party if you're up for it, or let's get coffee.
Yeah.
Right? Like, don't exclude them because you're anticipating what they're feeling.
Okay.
Right? Because I think if you're like, oh, Rachel might feel anxious to come.
So
I'll just ask her to go to coffee.
Right. Or I'm not going to invite her.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think give them another option. Invite them to what you want them to come to maybe. And then give them another option. And then it's their choice to say yes to one or both. Be like,
got it.
I'd love to come to your birthday party, but actually I really want to talk to you. So let's get coffee too if that's possible. And then we can really talk.
That's awesome. I love that. Well, Rachel, thank you so much for sharing every bit of your journey with me. I think my goal in this podcast is that people won't feel alone. Also, so that people will feel empowered to share their story. And I truly feel like yours is powerful. And I'm hoping that people will listen. And like Blake said to you, this is for you. I'm hoping that there will be someone that God will speak to them and say, this is for you.
Yeah.
It's clear that just as Hagar was seen by God in her wilderness, you too have been seen and sustained by his grace as well. Your journey is a testament to the power of faith and the strength that comes from trusting in God's plan, like you said, even when it seems unclear. So thank you again so much for joining me today. It's been a blessing.
It's been so much fun. And I think just sharing my story of anxiety, I hope it's healing to other people, because I know it's been healing for me to just even hear myself talk about it and at different times, but just being like, wow, I can't believe I've come so far, or I can't believe I've made this revelation, and just see God's faithfulness and being able to process it sometimes out loud.
Praise God. That's awesome. Well, for those of you who are listening, I hope Rachel's story has inspired you to look for God's presence in your own wilderness moments, and to remember that just as God saw Hagar, he sees you too. And if you'd like to learn more about A Way of Handmaids or Wild Haven Collective, you can check the show notes where I'll include links to both her Instagram handles and her website. Thank you for joining us on More Precious Than Rubies. Be sure to subscribe, leave a review, and tune in next time as we continue to explore the lives of remarkable women. Until then, you're worth far more than rubies. Set about your work vigorously with arms strong for your tasks. Open your arms to the poor and extend your hands to the needy. Charm is deceptive and beauty is fleeting, but a woman who fears the Lord is to be praised.